On March 21st, several photos allegedly depicting test flights of a heavy-duty armed helicopter in China caused a sensation on both domestic and international online platforms. However, specific details and performance parameters of this helicopter are currently being strictly guarded. Reportedly weighing up to 10 tons at takeoff, this armed helicopter's side profile bears close resemblance to the US Black Hawk helicopter and China's Z-20, rather than the US AH-64 Apache. Many speculate that this helicopter is a derivative model based on the Z-20, dubbing it the Z-21. From the images, it can be observed that the Z-21's cockpit employs a stepped design at the front, with less prominent elevation compared to the Apache, resulting in less noticeable height disparity between the front and rear pilot seats and limiting the co-pilot's field of view. This suggests that although China may have drawn inspiration from the design of the Black Hawk during the development process, it has not fully grasped the level of optimization achieved in the aerodynamic layout of the Apache. Clearly, China's aerodynamic capabilities still have room for improvement. According to the images, the Z-21 features a smooth, low cylindrical structure on top of the rotor, believed to be a millimeter wave radar. This design has previously appeared on Apache helicopters, albeit with a flat round fire control radar known as the longbow. Russia has also developed a spherical radar placed on top of the rotor shaft. China's new smooth low cylindrical millimeter wave radar is believed to have borrowed design elements from American and Russian armed helicopters' fire control radars, with a compromise in form. The advantage of this radar is that when the enemy radar only detects the spherical radar, it cannot determine the specific position and RCS, or radar cross-section, of the helicopter below, making it difficult to be effectively attacked. Nevertheless, it facilitates easier initiation of actual attacks on the enemy. The Z-21's fairing resembles the early flat nose of the Apache, with the machine gun position similarly shifted rearward. The Z-21's engine exhaust device borrows from the Apache's upward-facing configuration to reduce infrared signal exposure. The aircraft's standard configuration includes 6 racks on either side of the fuselage, consistent with the firepower setup of a standard 10-ton class heavy-duty armed helicopter. The wide tail beam facilitates the integration of more equipment and fuel tanks, aligning with the PLA's demand for long-range design principles. The Z-21 retains the tail rotor of the Z-20 and closely resembles the details of the US Black Hawk helicopter. It appears that Chinese designers have a penchant for American style, even in the tail design of helicopters. It can be inferred that the Z-21 is a modification of China's Z-20 based on the requirements of an armed helicopter, designed for easy mass production and aligning with the PLA's practical military development approach. Based on past experience, this transitional model is unlikely to be quickly replaced by newer models, but rather may serve as a mainstay aircraft for at least a decade. Judging from the current PLA helicopter configuration, the situation is becoming untenable, and there is indeed a need for the Z-21. For example, the Z-19 sacrifices the machine gun to carry more missiles and does not have a cannon anymore. The Z-10 sacrifices protection to ensure range and payload, and the carried missiles are not huge enough. Its operational radius is limited, preventing it from accompanying the Z-20 transport helicopter for the entire journey, and performing long-distance tasks such as crossing the Taiwan Strait. At the same time, it lacks power when operating in high-altitude areas. Therefore, it is necessary to develop a new type of heavy-duty armed helicopter to enhance air assault and long-range strike capabilities, especially for landing operations in the Taiwan Strait and high-altitude combat operations on the China-India border. It is understood that the Z-21 was designed by the Harbin Aircraft Industry Group, which also designed the Z-20. It is manufactured by the Changhe Aircraft Industry Group, which also produced the Z-10 armed helicopter. The 602 Institute, which played a key role in the design of the Z-10, also participated in the development of the Z-21. Therefore, it is readily available to draw from the power system of the Z-20 general-purpose helicopter and the weapon system of the Z-10 armed helicopter. This mature development approach can effectively shorten the development cycle, and it is estimated that this armed helicopter will be finalized as early as next year. According to Jane's Defense Weekly, the Z-21 is equipped with an improved WZ-10 turboshaft engine with a power output of 1,790 kilowatts. However, Chinese military bloggers believe that the Z-21 may be equipped with the same Russian VK-2500 turboshaft engine as the Ka-52. It is said that the VK-2500P engine has optimized high-altitude performance, can start at an altitude of 6,000 meters, and can safely fly at altitudes above 6,700 meters. Moreover, the maximum sustainable power of this engine is 2,700 horsepower. In comparison, the AH-64E Apache Guardian uses two General Electric T700-701D turboshaft engines, each with a maximum sustainable power of 1,716 horsepower. Furthermore, China reportedly signed a contract with Russia in 2022 to purchase 100 VK2500PS-03 turboshaft engines, indicating that China will reverse engineer this engine in the future. However, a netizen revealed that China, as a Mi-171 user, published the Mi-171E helicopter structure and performance, which lists the maximum cruise power of the VK2500PS engine after adjustment as 1,750 horsepower, only 34 horsepower higher than the maximum sustainable power of the Apache's T700-701D engine. This time, for propaganda purposes, the VK2500 presents the maximum power under emergency mode as the maximum sustainable power. This is common in Russian product promotion, exploiting caliber differences and exaggerating technical indicators. Netizens commented that these Chinese military media outlets are doing military business online, and collecting information is the work of their subordinates. Since it's a job, there is no talk of hobbies, let alone delving into details. Making such jokes is normal. Indeed, some of China's military social media bloggers may be more concerned with traffic and commercial interests, therefore lacking rigor and professionalism. Therefore, a comprehensive and objective evaluation of the performance of armed helicopters is necessary. Take the engine, for example. While maximum power is important, factors such as reliability and performance at high altitudes cannot be overlooked. After all, in actual combat, armed helicopters mainly undertake ground attack missions, where the greatest threats often come from portable surface-to-air weapons, rather than from aerial combat. Therefore, simply comparing engine thrust does not hold much significance. It requires a comprehensive assessment of adaptability and reliability in complex battlefield environments. So, what is the current level of China's armed helicopters? Let's take a look at the tender for attack helicopters by the Pakistani military. In 2018, the Pakistani military initiated an international tender to update its fleet of attack helicopters, with contenders including the American AH-1 Super Cobra, China's Z-10, and Turkey's T-129 helicopters. Ultimately, the AH-1 Super Cobra helicopter emerged victorious in the bidding process. However, in 2019, the US government suspended its plans to sell AH-1 helicopters to Pakistan. Consequently, Pakistan turned to Turkey to procure T-129 helicopters. Still, due to Turkey's purchase of the Russian S-400 air defense system, which led to the US cutting off the supply of turboshaft engines, the delivery of T-129 helicopters became uncertain. In 2023, Pakistan could only purchase China's Z-10 helicopters. The sequence of Pakistan's choices implies an assessment of the performance of different helicopters. The preference was for the American AH-1 Super Cobra helicopter, followed by Turkey's T-129, and ultimately China's Z-10. The primary considerations were the performance and reliability of the engines, with the reputation of the American T-700 GE701D turboshaft engine evidently higher than that of China's turboshaft engine. China's Z-10 uses the WZ-9 engine, and Pakistan had previously evaluated it, concluding that the Z-10 lacked power in hot and high-altitude environments. It is evident that there is a gap between Chinese helicopters and Western standards, let alone compared to top-tier Western helicopters. Since the reform and opening up, China has imported helicopters from Russia and the United States. In the 1980s, after purchasing 24 civilian versions of the Mi-17 helicopter, China immediately deployed them in high-altitude areas. After 2009, China also purchased another type of high-altitude helicopter from Russia, the Mi-171E, with over 100 units delivered. The performance of the Mi-171E has been widely promoted by Chinese media. However, when developing its own large-tonnage high-altitude helicopters, China did not choose the design of the Mi-171E, but instead drew more inspiration from the design of the American Black Hawk helicopter, subsequently developing the Z-20 and its further improved version, the Z-21. This reflects the admiration for American technology among Chinese defense industry researchers. Internet users have revealed that despite the high praise of the Mi-171E in official propaganda, its actual performance in high-altitude regions, including maximum takeoff weight and payload capacity, is far lower than the published data. This indirectly suggests that the description of the Mi-171E helicopter by Chinese media may be exaggerated. After successfully replicating the American Black Hawk helicopter and developing the Z-20, China has further expanded its helicopter series, offering various derivative models for different branches of the military, including black camouflage for the Army, light gray and white camouflage for the Navy, light gray camouflage for the Air Force, and olive green camouflage for the Armed Police. Now it's the Z-21. According to unconfirmed reports, China's helicopter engine, the WZ-9, although developed by the Shenyang Engine Research Institute of Aviation Industry Corporation of China, received assistance from Ukraine and Russia. It is worth mentioning that Ukraine has made significant contributions to China's aviation industry. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, Ukraine's economy declined, and many experts in the military-industrial complex possessed technical expertise but lacked opportunities to profit from it. China seized this opportunity by importing a large number of Ukrainian technical experts who helped introduce a vast array of aviation technologies, including aircraft design, manufacturing, engines, and weapon systems. It can be said that without Ukraine's assistance, China's aviation industry could not have achieved its current level of success. The Chinese Communist Party has long suffered from serious deficiencies in the application of armed helicopters. Apart from a few armed helicopters in the Army Aviation Corps, it was not until recent years that the airborne troops began to receive a small number of WZ-10 attack helicopters. As a result, the aerial support firepower of the PLA airborne troops is not only lacking compared to the United States, but probably also slightly insufficient compared to Russia's VDV. If the Navy purchases the Z-21, it can enter the amphibious assault fleet, be deployed on land, engage in island-hopping operations, and be stationed on reefs in the South China Sea. On the other hand, in terms of actual control on the China-India border, helicopters can be rapidly deployed here for logistical and emergency rescue operations. At the same time, the United States has accelerated arms sales to Taiwan, recently delivering a large number of Stinger missiles, indicating that they may have intelligence on the development of PLA helicopters and are seeking to rapidly help Taiwan strengthen its air defense capabilities against armed helicopters. Armed helicopters are meant for ground attacks, but when faced with Stinger missiles and Ukraine's air defense systems, Russia's famous Ka-52 armed helicopters have suffered heavy losses, with at least 60 shot down, nearly half of the total, and the number of damaged helicopters is difficult to count. This shows that if air superiority cannot be ensured, armed helicopters providing close air support are quite vulnerable. In the Taiwan Strait region, Taiwan has F-16s, while Japan has F-35s. On the China-India border, India has advanced fighters such as the French Rafale, Su-30 MKI, and Mirage 2000I. On these two critical fronts, it may be difficult for the Chinese military to maintain air superiority, making it possible for the Z-21 to suffer a high loss rate similar to the Ka-52. Furthermore, as China faces off against the US military in the future, the US military now opts for tilt-rotor aircraft, with a range of 4,000 kilometers and much faster speeds than helicopters. Armed helicopters, whether in terms of speed or range, cannot keep up. In fact, in China's foreign affairs solutions, armed helicopters have been completely replaced by drones. Armed helicopters are like infantry in terms of vision. They are compared based on their mutual detection capabilities. In recent years, infantry equipped with nothing but handheld infrared imagers the size of flashlights have been able to detect armed helicopters from a distance of over 5 kilometers. Moreover, infantry can quickly recognize helicopters from their flight patterns and determine whether they are friendly or hostile based on whether air control is maintained. However, armed helicopters are unable to distinguish whether these individuals several kilometers away are soldiers or even human beings, let alone discern friend from foe. In future battlefields, ground troops will be guided by quadcopter drones to provide ground firepower, with a single infantry platoon capable of firing up to 10 kilometers away. In areas away from ground forces, there will be large unmanned aerial vehicles equipped with satellite communication. In enemy-controlled areas, inexpensive drones will be used for attrition, and hundreds of anti-radiation cruise missiles will be released when encountering radar and electromagnetic interference. In areas under our control, numerous long-endurance drones will be on standby, with bomb trucks standing by for deployment. Each infantry platoon on the ground will be equipped with a Sandcat armored vehicle carrying a 120mm mortar, with quadcopter drones equipped with laser guidance and laser communication overhead, ensuring accurate first strikes within a 10-kilometer radius. Nearby, tanks carrying 155mm howitzers will act as communication nodes. In such a battlefield, armed helicopters will struggle to find their space. As for hunting and harassing, armed helicopters don't have the endurance of over 100 hours like integrated drones for reconnaissance and strikes. In the past, a platoon only controlled a battlefield width of a few hundred meters, while a division's battlefield width was only dozens of kilometers, with a depth of only 70 kilometers. When the firepower radius of a platoon extends to 10 kilometers, how much wider and deeper will a division's battlefield be? Where will the airfields for armed helicopters be placed then? With a total endurance of only 5 hours, armed helicopters spend most of their time running errands, rendering ground support meaningless. Germany has scrapped the project for the next generation armed helicopter, while the United States has scrapped the partially developed Comanche and recently canceled the $2 billion Future Scout armed helicopter program, for which a prototype, the Bell 360, was already built and scheduled to make its first flight this year. Japan has gone even further, announcing plans to cut the number of armed helicopters in its military. In March, during an interview with CCTV, Wu Ximing, the chief designer of the Z-10, mentioned the need to develop the next generation of helicopters, possibly indicating that the CCP is preparing to develop rotorcraft. For years, the PLA has been crossing the river by feeling the stones, so its source of inspiration likely comes from the US Future Vertical Lift or FVL program, which aims to manufacture a new generation of rotorcraft to replace its existing helicopter fleet, including transport and reconnaissance/armed helicopters. While the appearance of these rotorcraft may differ from traditional helicopter layouts, their main elements remain those of helicopters, such as the Osprey tilt-rotor aircraft. At the same time, these new rotorcraft are expected to have a flight speed of at least 430 kilometers per hour, which may indicate that China's new armed helicopters may also target this speed. In fact, over the years, the CCP has replicated quite a few aircraft, such as the J-20 and Z-20, each excelling in its respective field. The J-20 replicates the F-22, while the Z-20 directly imitates the Black Hawk. After their development, their parameters were quite impressive, but the question remains, why have they never appeared in actual combat? When Pelosi visited Taiwan, the CCP dispatched the Su-35 instead of the J-20. Wasn't it supposed to be a stealth 5th-generation aircraft deployed along the coast? Why didn't it come out for a walk? During the Sichuan-Tibet earthquake in 2022, the rescue scene still featured the Mi-171 instead of the Z-20. Wasn't it supposed to be a 10-ton heavy-duty helicopter with the powerful WZ-10 engine? Why did it fail at a critical moment? Ultimately, it boils down to unreliability. Some netizens even mockingly suggest that Russia has sent envoys to lobby China to return Soviet and Russian weapons to support the Russia-Ukraine war. To politely decline, the CCP simply took out all Russian weapons for use. Dispatching the Mi-171 for disaster relief serves as an implication to Russia that the CCP lacks a surplus, indicating a shortage of resource for its own use. To put it simply, China has indeed been learning from the United States in the helicopter field. After the Z-20, the Z-21 has arrived, and there will be a Z-30 in the future. The Chinese military, it seems, will not rest until it has learned everything from the Americans.